In this course, we're going to take a look at the capabilities of Stable Assistant, the new service from Stability AI, which allows us to use Stable Diffusion 3 to create images and also to edit these images. This is a beginner's course, which is intended to take viewers from the starting point as complete beginners with Stable Assistant, and which shows you how to get the most from the new service and also what the capabilities of the service are. New features inside of Stable Assistant have been added in just the last few weeks and multiply the things that you can do. As well as being a powerful chatbot, the Stable Assistant is also capable of acting as an image editor, and it's also capable of producing videos. So this is going to be your introduction to this exciting new service, and hopefully you'll find afterwards you'll be able to understand the benefits as well as some of the advantages of using this new, somewhat unique chatbot. So in this course, we're going to be taking a look at some of the features and functions inside of Stable Assistant. Now, Stable Assistant consists of multiple models, and they are still in the early beta phase. So we can expect that there will be some changes to come along in the next few months. Now, this course is going to be just covering the basic features of the software. It's not intended to give you a perfect understanding of how to get perfect results every time. This is, after all, still in beta. Things are changing very quickly. Now, if you've used Stable Diffusion in the past, Stable Assistant is mainly going to be different to you for a number of reasons. First of all, you have to pay for this service. So the service has got currently 4 levels. You can pay monthly or yearly, and the entry level is $9 a month, which gives you 900 credits. And then we have a premium service, which is 12,000 credits, and that costs $99 per month. All of the services, all of the levels will allow you a chat history, so you can keep your entire sort of history of chats online for future reference. In words, what they say is Stable Assistant is a friendly chatbot powered by Stability AI's text and image generation technology. And importantly, they say it features Stable Diffusion 3 and also the language models that they use. And the purposes are going to be generating images from conversational prompts. You're going to get into a conversation with the chatbot. It can give you information, so it can produce knowledgeable responses, and it can help you, say, with writing projects and enhancing content with complementary matching images. Now, the images will be created in a variety of styles and using a variety of different models. Now, to get started, you need to sign up. Then once you've signed up, just log in, and that will take you to your account page. Once you've deposited the initial amount, and you can change the amounts that you're paying pretty much every month if you want to, and it's not a long-term subscription. You can pay yearly, but if you're paying monthly, you can cancel anytime you want to. One thing I've noticed with this service is that it doesn't seem to link in with other paid services. There are multiple other services that Stability AI offers, and this one just seems to stand alone. It doesn't seem to share the same account, but I'm not 100% sure, so you may have a different experience, and you might find that when you're using it, the experience may be a little bit different from what I'm showing you here, because it may be a little bit different in different countries. Now, if you've used a service like ChatGPT-4, you will know, roughly speaking, what to expect. But there are some differences, and for those who are completely new to this, I've been using this software now for a month, and it has changed quite a lot, even just during that period. So we said before, this is a beta service which allows you access to Stable Diffusion 3. Strictly speaking, Stable Diffusion 3 is in beta, and Stable Diffusion 3 can produce really amazing images. We have some examples of those here. This one is amazing. It's very photorealistic. There's some of the others as well. Now, when you're working with chat with Stable Assistant, it will give you assistance in chat form. So you'll be able to get started quite easily. We'll be taking a look at how to get results in a way that might not be completely obvious. And I'm going to be working on a desktop. If you're working on a smaller device, you may find that there are some differences in how things work. Now, the services currently included are Stable Diffusion 3, and then we have Stable Image Services. This currently has a number of options available, and we'll take a look at those. We've got Search and Replace, which is a very new one from Stability AI, Remove Background, Control Structure, which kind of is almost like an inspiration based on an existing image. And then we have Sketch, which takes a sketchy image and then turns it into a more substantial looking portrait or image. Now, Stable Video is another service which is available, and this one has recently been improved quite a lot. So you'll be able to get the very latest abilities inside of Stable Video, and this is probably one of the more exciting ones, because we seeing very clear evidence of advances in the quality of the output. And you can now use it inside of Stable Assistant. We're taking a look at that, and some of the results that are possible are pretty impressive. Now, once you've created your account and logged in, you'll be met with a screen like this. My one here is in light mode. There's a control center here. If you open that, you'll get a bunch of options, including the option to change the light mode to dark mode if you want to. I'm going to be working in light mode for this particular video, but you might find in some other videos I've changed to dark mode. Other aspects of the layout, we've got a new chat option here. We've got past chats here, and we can go ahead and close that sidebar if we want to, and we can have a much larger screen. And if we want to, we could just start a new chat and see exactly how things proceed from there. What I would say for this particular video, the service is still in beta, so there may be some errors that happen. What I'm going to do is, if there is a problem, I'm not going to pretend that there wasn't a problem. Instead, I'll acknowledge the problem and we'll try to work through the issue, because it's not going to be a perfect service. So I'm not going to pretend that it is perfect. Now, the bottom part here has an option to upload images, or we can type messages. This is an ongoing chat. I'm going to actually create a new chat. And to do that, it will say we'll clear the current messages and start a new chat. Sounds a little bit daunting, a little bit frightening maybe, but in reality, it isn't that serious. It just stores the old chats. So we click to confirm. Now we've got some instructions here. So how do I get started with a Stable Assistant? This will give us this is a special function that allows us to understand how to use the service, the basics of how to use the service. The options here also include Surprise Me, and it came here with the apology. And you can see here, it's tried to do something a couple of times and it's created an error both occasions. Like I say, we'll leave these things in. I want you to see where the service is at the moment. And what we'll do is just take a quick look at what assistance it gave us here. It says you can ask Stable Assistant for help, and you can, for instance, ask a question. Can you provide a cake recipe? And then create a photo of how that cake will look. Now, what we're going to do is to actually type in a prompt. So can you create a beautiful landscape image? Now remember, it's going to be using Stable Diffusion 3 for creating these images. And we've got another error there. So what I'll do is try to find out what is going on. And the most useful thing I found so far when you're getting lots of errors is to refresh the page that you're working on. So I'm going to refresh the browser page, and hopefully that might fix a couple of things. Now, it turned out that Stable Assistant did not want me to have more than 2 tabs open. So what I did was I closed the tab that I was working on and went back to the previous tab that I was working with. So I'm now just working with 1 tab open, and it seems to be happy to follow my instructions. And on this occasion here, Stable Assistant did actually create my landscape image. You can see here, it's quite a beautiful one. We've got a sunset, we've got nice colors, and it's in square format. So it understood the word landscape to mean the content of the image rather than the aspect ratio. Now the image looks good. And what we can do is to click, if I wasn't happy with this, I'm very happy with it. It looks beautiful. This is Stable Diffusion 3, which is creating this. And every time I'm using Stable Diffusion 3 to create an image, I think it's costing about six and a half credits. And every time I ask it something, I'm using, I think I'm using 1 credit. I'll have to double check that. Now, what we can do here is to come and create another version. And we just do that by clicking on the recycle icon there, and it will create another item similar to what we created already. Now, it's pretty fast. Obviously, it's doing the process on the servers. The images both are organized here. They are quite large images. This is Stable Diffusion 3. Now, I can, if I want to, generate another image, and it's pretty quick. All of this stuff is happening on the servers over at Stability AI. It does help to have a very fast internet. That's the one thing that will help the images be delivered to your web browser. Now you can see here, we can continue like this, and we can create multiple images. And let's just create another one. Now there is this option which I find not that useful to like or dislike, and you can add feedback. So if there's something there that is specifically irritating or specifically positive, this is the thumbs up. You can submit feedback. You can also put in a negative feedback. You can copy the images using this button here. So we've now got 4 images, all of them looking pretty beautiful, really interesting sunsets. It's decided to do sunset with a river running through it for all of the images. They all look beautiful. Stable Diffusion 3 is an amazing package in how it can render images. Now, the images, in terms of how to download them, how do we actually download them? If I wanted to use this outside of Stable Assistant, let's go ahead and just ask it a question. How do I download this image? So it's telling me just basically to use the built-in function within the browser, right click the image, and then use the menu to save the image. So pretty straightforward. So you can pretty much use it in any browser that you want to. You can use it on a tablet or an iPhone, whatever you want to. And we've got the images stored up here. This is how they look. And when we have a conversation, what I find is that the images basically stay up. But when we end a conversation, when we move to another conversation, the images will need to be reloaded from their server. So I like to keep the conversation going. But now what we have here is an example of how Stable Diffusion 3 produces images. And you can see the kind of quality of the images that it does produce here. So we've created some beautiful looking images, but we want to take a look at how to change the aspect ratios. Now, you remember I asked it to create a landscape image, and it created in square format 4 images for me. However, I want to know what kind of aspect ratios I can work with. And you know, this is one area where Stable Diffusion, if you're working on a desktop, Stable Diffusion sometimes allows you to create images in different aspect ratios. How do we do that in this particular situation? Well, we can ask it. So I'm just going to say to the chatbot, wow, those are beautiful images. Let's ask it what size they are. What size are they in pixels? And because it's an intelligent little bot, it will tell you what size of the images are. Now, in this particular case, the dimensions of the landscape image are approximately 1024 by 768 pixels. Now, it does have a little statement here that Stable Assistant can make mistakes. As you can see, these cannot be 1024 by 768 as they're square. So it's obviously one of the mistakes that it's made. And what I try to do is in these conversations, honestly, I try to keep things positive. I like to give it positive reinforcement, positive feedback. And I don't like getting into arguments with it. So even though I know it's wrong, I'm not going to argue about the fact that it's wrong. Now, I actually did open up one of the images in one of the other tabs that I've got on the browser. And you can see it's a pretty large image that is created here. I would say it's probably 1024 by 1024. So can you create an image in landscape aspect ratio? So here it says I can create an image in landscape aspect ratio, and it's obviously done something which is not quite in landscape aspect ratio. So what I'm going to ask it is to create an image in 16:9 aspect ratio. That will give us the kind of aspect ratio for YouTube videos. So if you're creating a YouTube thumbnail, this will be the aspect ratio. So on this occasion, it hasn't done that. So what I'm going to do is to try out a slightly different tack. So what I've done is to ask it specifically, give me something that's 1920 by 1080 pixels high. And it's given me another square format image, and it's told me, sure, I can create an image in that particular aspect ratio, and it's told me this is a 16:9. It's obviously incorrect, and it's making these mistakes. It's obviously failed here, and what you probably need to understand is that the language model, which we're talking with, pretty good model from Stability AI, is different from the image model, and it doesn't know what the image model is doing. So the two, they talk together, the one instructs the other, but they are not able to communicate two ways. So the communication is sort of a little bit stunted, and it doesn't understand that it's creating images that are incorrect in terms of the aspect ratio. Now, since I'm paying money for every single time I'm creating these images, this is maybe one of those opportunities to leave a bit of feedback. So these are supposed to be in landscape aspect ratio, and we'll submit the feedback, and hopefully something will be improved at the back end. Let's talk about the acceptable use policy, which can create a lot of problems. But before we do that, let's go ahead and resume a chat. So this is the previous images, the previous chat that we're working on. To resume a chat, just click on resume chat. If you are lucky, you will find that all the images are available. If you're not lucky, what happens is that the images disappear, and it can be painfully slow to actually re-establish all of the images. Here, this is not too bad. Sometimes it is painfully slow. They've got very slow servers sometimes. The acceptable use policy is here. Let's take a look at the problems that this can cause. So the acceptable use policy here starts off with a statement that they want the software to be used by adults. There are things that you will not do. You will not violate the rights of others. You cannot use this to incite violence or terrorism, obvious stuff. But the biggest problem is when you do anything that is sexy inside of the images, anything that is not safe for work. What can happen in that situation is that you can get weird stuff happening. Let's create a new chat, and let's create something which I think is going to be outside of the terms and conditions. I cannot fulfill this request as it contains content that goes against our guidelines, does not generate images containing nudity or sexual content. Obviously, this is something that you can do with the standalone versions of Stable Diffusion. You can do it with some of the third-party models, but you cannot do it with this model, and you can't satisfactorily produce nudity or anything sexy using Stable Diffusion. Now, this may be a positive thing for you. You may want to use this in a classroom. So the fact that it blanks out anything sexual might be a positive thing. For other people, it would be a negative thing. Sometimes if you create an image and the image it can detect whether there is anything inside the image that might go against its guidelines. So if you create an image and by chance the image has got a beautiful sexy woman nude on the beach, it may not show you that image. I don't know whether it blurs the images or makes them black, but you'll get an image that is unusable. You cannot actually see it. And in that situation, I believe they don't charge you for creating that image, but it's a useful thing to be aware of the acceptable use policy. It can create these sorts of responses. It can create images that you cannot use. If the image is black or if the image is blurred, I don't think they charge you for that. So that's one positive thing. It's been a few months now since Stability AI introduced Stable Video, which is the ability to work with video using new models that Stability AI created. Now, the description given here is create videos with text or image, turning your concept into captivating cinematics. The examples, pretty intriguing. Got a guy walking through the alley, a guy walking through snow to the pyramids. something very strange going on and something very strange here. It's pretty fascinating, and it has improved quite a lot since the launch. This is the second generation. And this is also happening within Stable Assistant, the new software or the new application that Stability AI launched. Now, rather than running stable video on powerful hardware on your own computer, it is now possible to use it inside of Stable Assistant. Now, the fact that you're paying for Stable Assistant means that you're going to have to take into account the cost. It's going to be 20 credits in this on this platform for every video that you create. Let's show you how to actually use it. Now, this is one example, and this is the result that we got here. So you can see square format and a pretty impressive video. Now, the method is very simple. What we do is that we go to the control, click on the toolbox control, and then just say image to video, and it will start processing the image and creating video out of it. It is one of the features that takes a little bit longer inside of Stable Assistant. Now, what the software does, it uses its zero shot capabilities to take an image that it's never seen before. This is created by Stable Diffusion 3, and that image is then used by the video director, the video model, to create this this short video here, few seconds long. And you don't give it any instructions. It just creates the video. So you get whatever you get. The dog here, the pug, the mechanical pug inside of a library. Notice that it takes the image and then just gives it some motion. We haven't told it what motion. It just does it. And you can see the result here. One of the things that I would say is that it looks pretty good. This is obviously a 1024 by 1024 image that we start off with, and then we get this video here. I'm not sure the exact dimensions, but it's got the same aspect ratio. We've got slightly rounded corners, which are basically a consequence of the design of the website. The video itself has square corners. And if we look at the video in detail, one of the things you might notice is that it does have to produce detail that it has never seen before. So the detail in the image here, right at this point, is completely new. We start off around here, and it starts off at that point and then creates this new detail here. I would say that the new detail, you can tell that it's not quite the same quality as the original detail. So it tries to create new information, but I feel that it does a good job. Like if you're not focused here and you're just looking at the dog, you can't see that it sort of is lower resolution. Another thing that you notice if you really take a look at it is that the fireplace doesn't look completely consistent from start to finish. We almost get two fireplaces, and there's a map of the world here, and I think that remains remarkably consistent. But if you look very closely, you'll find that some parts of the map do begin to sort of lose their consistency as the image rotates. Now, it is pretty remarkable that it can do this just from a single image. And I think the pug dog, you can see, for instance, the legs, the interaction there, the ground. It looks, I would say, pretty convincing. The dog's face, I think, is a little bit askew, the perspective isn't quite right towards the end there, but it's still a pretty respectable result. And if you take this for an image that's been created with just a few, literally just a couple of moments of waiting, I would say it's pretty impressive. Now, if you run it a second time, what happens? I'll show you what happens. This is the first one, and I ran it a second time, and this is what we got. So it sort of randomly changes the motion each time you run it. And my understanding is that every time is going to be unique, the results that you get. This one, we can see a little bit of the distortion getting a bit worse in terms of the dog itself. The overall motion of the camera has changed as well. Now, it is quite a lot of credit each time you do one of these images, so that kind of limits what you can do. But I would say this one here was more satisfactory than this one. And there is obviously that option of creating more than one attempt to see whether you can get a better result. Now, the statement can also be restated. If you get a result that you don't really like first time round, you can just try again until you get something that looks a little bit better. Now, the processing time, I'll say, is approximately about a minute. So it's pretty quick, and it's a lot quicker than if you have the video running on your computer, on your own middle of the road computer. Now, I also tried to create a video from an older image. This was an image of I would say, steampunk dove, and it just didn't look very high quality. So I asked it, can you create a higher quality image? It created a couple more versions, and then I said, can you make the images higher quality? This looks good. I prefer the look of this. So I went ahead and asked it to animate that. Now, it did a decent job. Here, there's quite a lot less structure in the clouds, and everything I would say looks pretty good. It looks fairly convincing. The clouds in the background maybe are not quite as realistic as you would. I don't know. It does a reasonably good job. We've got some clouds which basically seem to resemble more what's behind than what's in front. So it's kind of, it takes knowledge of what's in the previous frame as it creates a new frame. It doesn't sort of take into account the entire image. And you can really see that here in this image here. It's taking what's there and kind of repeating it here, rather than taking what's here and then sort of like melding the two. So it doesn't have the same kind of abilities that Sora has, or Sora from OpenAI, but it is pretty good in very simple situations. Now, apparently Sora takes a long time just to complete a very simple video. This one's a lot faster, not yet quite as impressive, but it's much more impressive than it was when we first started a few months ago. So the original images with Stable Assistant, this is Stable Diffusion 3, obviously, not quite as high quality as the later images. And as the quality improves, I would want to spend my focus for the video on the more recent images. But there we have it. If you have a good looking image and the image has a natural motion that it might have inside of it, it can figure out what sort of motion to give it, and it will give it a simple motion. Hopefully, as time goes by, we'll get more complex motions, more realistic physics happening. But for the time being, simple animations. My recommendation is, if you are using this, try to look out for animations that you see in videos, maybe on YouTube, or there have been some contests where other AIs have been used to create video. Try to get your inspiration from what other people are doing, because it is quite a skill trying to figure out what the video might look like once this AI has finished working with it, and where it's also interesting to see what sort of situations you can actually use it. There are some very innovative uses of a video AI that I've seen, particularly on YouTube. And when you see it, you recognize it. It's a great source of inspiration, just watching what other people are doing with the technology. This is an image of a mouse inside a picture with a top hat and some luggage. Now, Stable Diffusion 3 is one of the best AIs for creating this type of image. We can recreate this in order to get a slightly different version. And I really like the lifelike look of the image, the case here, the little tags there, the little travel tags. It looks different from other AIs, and I like the feel of this one. This is a different style, slightly different outcome. So obviously re-rolling with the re-roll button is one way of getting a different result. But we can also ask it to do something like to create a prompt for us. So I can say, can you create something similar with a penguin? And it should more or less stick to the same theme, but change the outcome slightly. So it's going to do its own thing, but the outcome is going to be, I'm not entirely certain what the result is going to look like. Now, every time it creates images, obviously the images are going to be different each and every time. That's just how it works. But when you ask it to change things, you're not entirely sure what things are going to look like. In this situation, it looks awesome. I really like the look. And I can say, look, can you tell me what the prompt that you used? The prompt used to generate the image wearing a top hat was a dapper penguin donning a classic top hat complete with a white band, and so on and so on. So it's just created a prompt based on the previous prompt or the previous images. I like the outcome, and once again I can re-roll. But there's a new feature that we have that allows us to create images that are based on what we already have, but that are slightly different. And that is control structure. We'll take a look at control structure and how that actually runs once this one has finished generating. Now the result here was something that looks like an illustration more than a photograph, and sometimes it does that. The instructions for using the software tells us that occasionally it will actually do something that is more like an illustration than a photograph, but I think most people are probably expecting something more like this than like this, but you will occasionally get that, and you can prompt for whatever results you want. I wouldn't necessarily use the word photorealistic all the time, maybe in the style of a photo, because if you put photorealistic, it sometimes means that you're going to get something that doesn't, this is a penguin in a top hat. It's not photorealistic, because that's, you need to be careful with the use of words, because the AI can pick up a very different meaning. But let's go ahead and use a new feature, which is control structure. So we can say open toolbox, control structure. Control structure allows us to change the style according to whatever we want. Let's choose in the style of a charcoal drawing with broad brush strokes, and give it a chance to do something using the control structure feature. Now the control structure feature changes the image based on the results that you've instructed it to give you. And this is the result that we got. So it's a little bit different from the original one that we were using. It's quite a lot different, and it is in the style of a charcoal painting. Now I'm going to ask it what prompt did you use, and I'm going to say to it as well, is there any way of getting rid of the signature? What prompt did you use, and is there any way of getting rid of the signatures that appear? Signature there is not necessarily what I wanted, and the results that we got here was that it used exactly the same prompt, and it says to remove the signature you can just use editing tools. So I'll save this, and then I'll edit the text to remove something I didn't want. I would have hoped that it would give me instructions on how to use negative prompts. Let's try again with this guy here, control structure, and in this time we'll say, look, make it in the style of a Vincent van Gogh painting. Now for the request for a Vincent van Gogh painting, what we got was this here, and I pressed the reroll button and we got this here. So you can see it's using the image, the original image, and it's taking that image and saying, how do I use the structure from this image to create a kind of a Vincent van Gogh painting? In some ways it's using the kind of impact, if you've heard of IP adapters or if you've heard of control nets, that's the kind of thing that it's trying to do. So it's not a literal translation from the original image to the newer image. It's a creative transformation. We'll take the penguin and control structure and just say make it epic style, and the result we got was this really nice looking image with the top hat that's consistent. The top hat again here, different styles, but the epic style, the epic instruction, it's been followed by giving it a kind of wartime leader kind of look here. And here I would say this looks like an explorer going off to explore some continent somewhere. So that's the original image, and this is epic style. So you got to use a little bit of creative thinking, a little bit of creative imagination to see where the image might lead to. And with the image that looks like an illustration, photorealistic, kawaii style, 3D render, let's see what it does with that. So we started off with this photorealistic kawaii style 3D render. You'll like the results. We got this result here. So that's the kawaii style. It's got the little kawaii hearts. Everything's nice and pink. It's somewhat photorealistic. Let's re-roll and see what it does this time. Something new every time. Here it produced a kawaii cat more than a penguin, and it's tried to keep the structure of the penguin, and we've lost the beak, but we've got a new face here, and it's not quite worked, but you get hopefully the power of this particular feature, this control structure. It's something that I think is very creative, and I think it's something that has a lot of applicability. There's a mouse here. I could use that same prompt, and it's in this particular conversation. When you have very, very long conversations, it can become a little bit difficult to remember exactly where things were. And if you're using this kind of control structure, you can end up forgetting exactly what instructions you used to create a particular outcome. So this is that same control structure used for the original image, the original mouse that we created up here with the luggage. And you can see the results that we got were pretty good. We got this here, which looks very nice. Given that we're working in a fairly limited space, what I would probably do is just to save the particular instruction set that produced this image here. So somewhere in my computer, I've got photorealistic kawaii style 3D render, and I'll be able to remember now that set of instructions for producing these really cute images. Guys, this is a really powerful one. Have lots of fun with it, and it's something that you'll keep coming back to and using again, and you'll be using it again and again. So not many chatbots have the ability to remove the background. We go to the toolbox and just choose remove background. You will notice that there isn't anything else. We just cancel or confirm. This is an image which may appear a little bit familiar. It's something which originates with the image you're just looking at, and I use the feature, the guy here, control structure, to create this one. You might want to try to guess what kind of prompt I used to get this guy from the original image. But we're going to use this one to remove background. So click here, remove background, and confirm, and it does it in one stroke. It's not very, it doesn't take too long at all. So this is the result, and we can actually just go and click on the image. We'll get an ability to see it in a slightly more zoomed in aspect. As you can see, it's a pretty decent background removal. Now, given that the software hadn't seen the image before, its ability to figure out what's foreground and what's background is pretty amazing. Where I have some lingering desire for improvement is the way that it handles the kind of hairy areas, the whiskers. They're not perfect. They're okay, but they're not perfect. And I would say just those areas with a bit of hair, they could have been a little bit more refined, because the hair does have quite a lot of fine detail. And we're really not seeing that fine detail in the area which has been a background removed. But the more firm areas, it's done a pretty decent job in removing what is background and keeping in what is foreground. Here we've got some of the cables which might have been difficult for it to work with. It's figured out these are foreground, these are required, and it's also left these areas in which I'm not entirely sure what that is. We don't have a lot of shadow. As you can see, the shadow is almost completely absent here, and there's a bit of shadow underneath the feet, but otherwise it has sort of not included the shadow. That might be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how you look at it. But I think given that it had probably never seen an image that looks like this, the fact that it managed to remove the background reasonably accurately, I think is a pretty decent sign. I think this is something which is extremely useful, and I've seen it done better in other software, particularly Photoshop, but I haven't seen it done this well in a service that is running on a chatbot online. The images are served as PNG ping files, and anything which is in the back, anything which has been erased will appear white. And yeah, you can save this and then use it in a different design if you want to. So that's basically how we do remove background. It's one of the simpler features. Hopefully we'll see some improvements over time, because I think this could potentially be a really, really useful feature for photo compositing within this kind of software. Search and replace is a relatively new feature from Stability AI. If we come here and choose search and replace, I think this one costs 4 credits, so it's one of the more expensive ones. We can just replace something, and we'll see if we just scroll down, replace the background, what to generate instead. I'm going to put in a deserted Victorian alleyway. Now we've got the result, and as you can see, it has produced a deserted Victorian alleyway, but it's not exactly what I was expecting to see. Let's go back to the original image. and try again. So we'll say search and replace background, and we'll try here a green field. So we have a replaced background, but it's not really replaced the background. It's replaced the core elements, the actual foreground, with something that looks like a green field. These were the ears of the mouse, and this is the luggage, this is the stuff at the front. So it's kind of taken the key subject and it's replaced that instead. So let's try to spin it a little bit, where we take the key subject and try to change that instead. Now for this image here, we've got the penguin, and we're going to change penguin into a hummingbird. So I've put hummingbird in red top hat from penguin bird in top hat. Let's see what that gives us. Now the search and replace, it takes about 20 seconds. It's pretty quick. We've got now penguin turned into a hummingbird. It's kind of facing the wrong way. We'll go ahead and try to generate another version and just take a look at the original. There's the original. So we've got the luggage there, we've got the luggage there, and it's tried its best to sort of position the hummingbird exactly where the penguin is. It's given the hummingbird the red top hat, which is exactly what I wanted. And here we are again. It's given us another version quite similar to the original one. Maybe the luggage attachments, they look a little bit more realistic on this one. And it's tried to give it some feet as well, which this is the old penguin feet, which it has turned into some kind of sculpture, into some kind of ornamental sculpture. Overall, I think this one looks better. I would say we've got an area here where we're not entirely sure what's happening, and let's get rid of that. And if we zoom in, it's not really clear what's supposed to be happening there, but the hummingbird itself actually looks quite fine, and it's kind of perched on this sculpture here, which looks okay. Let's go ahead and click away. And with this other one here, there's a stronger area of questionable replacement happening here. It's kind of reshaped the box, which now looks like the background, and it's not entirely convincing. And we've got the penguin feet turned into these ornaments, which one comes from the case, the other one comes from, I have no idea where. It's not exactly, the feet are not exactly standing on anything. So it's tried its best. The upper part of the image looks quite fine, but the lower part is a little bit confused. But you can see we're having more success in changing the subject rather than changing the background, which is the suggested prompt in the toolbox. Now, I tried several attempts to work with this image here to change things inside of this image, and the results, and I'll show you the successes and failures. The results in every situation was a failure. So going back to the original image right at the top, this guy here, I asked it to change the box here to something that resembled a piano, and it did actually do a pretty decent job. So you can see in this second image, we've got something, you can see the piano keyboard there. You can see a miniature piano keyboard happening right about there. We have got, however, something that doesn't look exactly like a piano. We've got this little odd bit here, and we've still got the luggage labels here. And if we just zoom in to this one, I can see the detail here. It does look a little bit like a piano. Got to say, I'm not entirely sure what's supposed to be on top there. It does look a little bit like maybe coins or something. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not the world's best expert on pianos. And if we come to this guy here, you can see the mouse is still looking pretty dapper. He's got the top hat, and we've got here something that doesn't look like a piano. It just looks like maybe a mouse cage or something. So it didn't quite manage to do it on this one, but we got something. It identified the right object, and it actually put the right object where it should be, where it replaced the luggage with the piano. So the instruction was to replace the luggage with the piano. So here we have the luggage, and you can see that little handle there was copied as well. This is the thing that produced the odd looking instrument at the front. And overall, I think the mouse was maybe a little bit better looking in the original image, but it's a perfectly acceptable outcome that we see here. it still looks pretty decent. And at least it managed to identify the correct thing. One thing I noticed as well is that the buttons here changed. So those are the buttons in one image. Not entirely sure why. And here we have slightly different looking buttons. So it does change the entire image. It creates a new image rather than just editing out the detail that you ask it to. It ends up creating a completely new image, and there are differences sometimes beyond what you've asked it to do. Now, I tried more search and replaces, and as you can see, I was trying to put the mouse in a different location. I was trying to put the mouse in something like a train station or somewhere else where the luggage would make sense, and also to change the style of the mouse. And in every situation, it struggled to get things right. Here we've got some rats which just appeared straight out of nowhere. I'm not sure what's going on there, but overall, this search and replace is the one that I've struggled with the most. It's the one that hasn't produced the results that I was expecting on the most number of occasions. And we also had more failures to actually produce images. Now, I have used other versions of search and replace from Stability AI, and on the whole, they're kind of new and improving. And hopefully this is just the starting phase for this particular technology. We know that this software can produce fantastic looking images, but it has got a bit of a struggle in kind of pinpointing exactly where the changes should be and putting in changes that match the requirements exactly. The inability to change the background, that's something I really struggled with. I don't think there was any situation in which, apart from changing this to a piano or something that looks like a piano, there was no situation in which we managed to actually get the background to change convincingly. But I think using search and replace may be something I'll do a little bit more in the future rather than something I'm going to focus on immediately. Now we're going to take a look at sketch to image. Now this is a sketch of a Japanese woman in a kimono, and when we use sketch to image, we click here and you do give it an instruction as to what you wish to see in the output image, the prompt. And it says a strong descriptive prompt that clearly defines elements, colors, and subjects will lead to better results. So it's telling us we need to put more in the prompt. What I did was I put in as a photograph, and what we got was this here. And if we take a look at this here, it has got the same structure as the sketch. We've got the woman in the middle, we've got the trees, and it does resemble what we had before. But what I was trying to recreate, what I was trying to create, let me show you, is something that was captured in this original image, and that was something that I actually got from Stable Assistant itself. I asked it to create an image like this. We got an image of a woman in a kimono along a path. We've got some buildings in the background, people along the street, cherry blossom, floral dress, floral kimono, and yeah, a second one, very similar. And then I asked it to create a sketch, a very simple sketch, much more simple. And it then using the sketch to image, we got something that doesn't quite do the job. So what I did was that I used some aspects of the original prompt that it created. I asked it, look, what prompt did you use to create this image? So what was your prompt? That's what I asked. And it gave me a detailed prompt telling me exactly how it had designed this image. And then I used that detailed prompt with one change. The original prompt is for an intricately detailed illustration. But I said, no, I don't want an illustration. I want a photograph. So I changed it to a photograph. And we ended up with this image here. And it looks kind of okay. I think overall, it does look somewhat photographic. I think sometimes with Stable Diffusion 3, it does struggle a little bit with the hands still. It doesn't get the hands perfect. The face could be a little bit better, but we've got the cherry blossom, we've got the trees, we've got the photographic style, we've got the people along the path, we've got the Imperial Palace there. And overall, I would say it looks pretty good. Just going to try again using the original sketch to image. We'll put in a very long prompt, an detailed photograph of we'll put in beautiful woman. So you can put in fairly long prompts into this little box here, and it's a little bit difficult to actually see what you're doing because the box is just literally just one line that you can see. what we can do is to change the time of day. So I put in some extra detail about hanging lanterns lighting the way. Sorry, I don't know that much about Japan during this era, but I imagine there were some hanging lanterns somewhere there. And you can see the prompt itself. I'm going to copy the prompt and maybe we'll paste it in and take a look at the prompt a little bit later. But what I want to point out is that the prompts we're using are conversational. They're not very structured in the way that we would structure a prompt with Stable Diffusion 1.5 or with Stable Diffusion XL. It's a changed way of working, and it's a little bit more in some ways like ChatGPT. So this is the newer image. Notice that the outline of the sketch is still there. Basically, we've got the woman standing where she was in the sketch, and we've got the path and the trees along the path. We've got a real avenue going on there. We've got some lit lanterns. We've got some lit lanterns there. I'm not sure if it's exactly twilight. I would want it to be a little bit darker. Let's go back and look at the sketch. Okay, so it's got the broad outline of the sketch. We can go ahead and retry this one to see what it does. This one does take a little bit longer, but it does produce really nice images. And here we've got one that I think looks fantastic. You can use much simpler illustrations, much simpler sketches to create the image. And here we've got, again, you've got that same structure with the path leading away. We've got lots of elements in this one, and I really like the way that it's produced this image of the woman with the bags at the back and the kimono. I like the feel of it. I like the kind of way that she's centered in the middle of the path. There's not too much detail in the background. I'm not sure that these figures in the background would be exactly like that in the era that we're talking about. This is supposed to be like a few hundred years ago. So the detail isn't perfect, but the structure does follow exactly what we had inside of the original sketch, inside of the original prompt as well. But you can also see how important the prompt is to get the image that we want. I'm actually going to paste the prompt and let's see what the prompt says. A detailed photograph of a beautiful woman in Japan during the Edo era. She's dressed in a kimono, walking along the path, blossom in full bloom, Tokyo. Okay. What we'll do is remove some of this bustling stuff here, and we'll leave the Imperial Palace. And apparently there's a temple there somewhere. The atmosphere is serene yet vibrant. It is twilight. Let's copy this twilight here and make it a little bit more prominent. So we're going to take the twilight and put it at the beginning and just change that like that. So let's see what it does when we use this prompt to create the image. I'm just going to create an image just to see what it looks like without using the sketch. So without using the sketch, we have this here. This looks fantastic. This looks really nice. I like this one as well. Maybe I like this one even better. This one really seems to conjure up the period that we're talking about. The twilight feeling is there. You can see the sunset. Let's see if we can get it again using that exact same prompt. Let's use sketch to image, paste, confirm. So these are the results here with the sketch, and you can see it's retained the pattern of the woman standing in the middle with the avenue on either side, the avenue of trees on the other side. You can also see that we've got the lanterns, these paper lanterns. These are beautiful lanterns, the lit lanterns along the path. We have a really nice looking image here. The style is beautiful. Stable Diffusion 3 produces beautiful looking styles. Here we have a photographic style. It is more realistic in some ways. We have got this problem with the guys in the background maybe needing a bit of a description where we really pin down that they are, again, of the same era, or maybe we need to remove them entirely from the prompt. Overall, I think this one meets the requirements of the prompt, the original prompt, better than the images that we got before. These ones weren't quite exactly what I was looking for. So that little trick of putting the twilight at the beginning of the prompt rather than towards the end, it produced a somewhat better looking image. We've still got the beautiful girl there, but we've got the lanterns much more visible. It does feel a little bit more like Twilight now. And with this other image, it's even more, the style is even more exactly what I want with the description. So you can see that using the sketch option gives you different results to using just a straightforward prompt from the original box. Using the sketch option gives you the kind of structure that you want in the image. Now, I asked it to create a sketch of a face, and then I asked it to describe an alien species, beautiful and female, and it gave me this, so I asked it to give me the prompt. What we'll do is to use the prompt that it gave me, sketch to image, and we'll see what that looks like. So we've now got a couple of results. So this is the original sketch, and this is the image that we got, and you can see it's really followed the sketch pretty closely. So we've got the face looking exactly as I want it to look. So in this way, we can actually use the sketch as a sort of prototype. We can create a prototype prompt, and then we can combine the two so that we always get the same kind of result in the final image. We get the composition exactly as we had it inside of the sketch. It produces very different looking images. Here, the skin's very different in terms of color. We've got a very lit background here. We've got a very plain background here, but we are keeping that basic composition. So the sketch is key when working with composition. It really helps you to put together exactly the image that you want. You can think of it as being, whether it's a portrait, whether it's wide angle, whether it's focused in close up, or whether it's head and shoulders, you can absolutely tie down what you want using the sketch to image functionality. I think this is one which is very successful once you really get into using it. So it's been about a year since Stability AI brought out Stable Assistant, and it has undergone quite a lot of improvement during that time. This is the ability to create 3D models. We can also do music, and let me see if I can find the track that I want to play you. Right, so listen to this one here. Let me just crank up the volume. Was the first tune that I made inside of Stable Assistant, and it's kind of good. Now, it's very difficult to manage the music. For instance, it's very difficult to tell when this track was made, when this one was made, and it's very difficult to actually to know exactly what's what. You can't rename it. You can't. It's a completely different track. Most of the time, the tracks don't sound too good. I mean, you have to make quite a few in order for it to produce a really nice selection. Let's take a look at the other options that you've got. We can create images. Okay, let's open this up. Okay, here we are. Now, this is more the ability to render text. As you can see, it has got a pretty decent ability with text now. In the past, Stable Diffusion 3 or whatever they're using struggled with text. Now it's been improved quite a lot, and it's actually very good for remixing. So if I want to remix this one, I can say new image with structure. Let's just go with the default anime style, and it will change it will create a new image with the new style. And you can see some of the images that I created with some some styles that I dialed in. So we kind of use this, I don't know exactly how they're using it, sort of control net, I suppose. And you've got here the same object, the same text. It's changed a little bit here. It looks quite similar there, and it's kind of following the instructions that you give it. This one doesn't look too good, but you've got a lot of power in terms of what you can do. And I found that this particular feature, given the new ability to handle text reasonably well, gives a lot of power if you're trying to create posters or other sorts of designs. And when it comes to other types of designs, you can actually get some pretty decent outcomes. So this is some thumbnails that I created, and it's very different from other models. It's very different from, say, the Adobe Firefly model or the Flux models. The Flux models are good, but the Flux models, there's a limitation to them because they're not the full model. They give you distilled models. But with this one, I think we're getting the full model, and they're making it quite powerful. And when you work with enlargements, they've actually got creative enlargements. So let's see one of the creative enlargements. This is, I think, this one here, which has been enlarged so that it looks quite a lot better. And it's actually done a really good enlargement. And sometimes the enlargements change things a lot, but this one, it kept the general feel of the original image. And I think it looks good. I think this is a really nice enlargement. You're seeing a very high quality image. And this is another example, very high. I don't know how large these are. These are like, I don't know, maybe several times larger than 4K, I think. I'm not sure, but it is a very large image. You can see a lot of detail. So, I mean, look at the detailing on the woman's armor. You can see the hair. It's pretty detailed. And yeah, this is the kind of results you can get nowadays. It's improved a lot over the last year. Some more examples of text and how well it handles text. This is now, I would say, slightly better than the Flux models. It's definitely better than the Flux Schnell model, and I'll say it's better than the Flux Dev models. So maybe if you're using the Flux Pro model, it may be able to match the ability of this. But overall, the text has improved quite a lot. I've just noticed using it over the months that it's become significantly better over time. But these are some adjustments, some remixes, which we got from a previous render. And I cannot find this is the difficulty with this platform. It's difficult sometimes to find things that you've worked on before. But we've got some renders now here, which are taken from, if I can find the original, I'll show you. But this is just a remix, exactly the same remix here. We've got this kind of dystopian futuristic feel, same thing here. And I think the original one might have been this one here. You've got the ability to create video as well. So I've created some Stable Video Diffusion using the local SVD for this image. I think we can try to create a video here as well. Let's come here. That's not it. So let's go to the toolbox. So in the toolbox, this is where you've got a lot of really nice features that they're adding all the time. We're in painting, replace background. Let's do image to video, which is very expensive. It's let's create a video from an image. In this example, we're going to use the tool to create a short video from a picture. First, ask the tool to create the assistant to generate a picture, and then use this. So there are no controls as yet. We've just got to hit the confirm button, and it will go and work with the video tool, and it will create a video. This is where having the local control, having the local installation of SVD, where you can control a whole bunch of parameters, can actually be quite a lot better than using the online version where you're paying for every single outcome. Okay, so this is the video, and this is the problem with the online video. It sometimes just completely sucks, and you cannot control what it does. This kind of spaceship disappearing is not very good. The ones I did locally, and I'll show you some of those if I can get hold of them, were a lot better than this, a lot better, like tons better, and you can get much better video quality with the local SVD. And we've got image to 3D. Let's try to use that one for this one. And again, no controls, we're just going to hit confirm. I've not been that impressed by the 3D so far, but we'll try this one and see what it's like. So it didn't take too long at all. It's figured out this is the element that it wants to work with, the text, and it's just given us a rendition which we can move around in 3D space. We can download this and use this in other software. So that original doll model that I showed you earlier, we could use that inside of Blender, for instance. And there are some use cases where you can use this very low quality 3D stuff. Now, the reason I started using Stable Assistant was because it's so much better in terms of its image quality than you can get out of DALL-E. And DALL-E is a great model. DALL-E 3 is a great model, but Stable Assistant can actually produce really photorealistic images. You have to be really careful and say to it, you want a photorealistic image, otherwise it produces this kind of illustration, and you can easily change the aspect ratio. So that's one benefit. This is one of the more photorealistic. I just put in photorealistic as one of the key prompts, and it's given us a really nice image. So we can create a new version of this, and it doesn't cost a lot to create these images, but there is a cost per image, which there isn't in DALL-E 3. DALL-E 3, you have to really abuse it before they limit you. So it can create fairly photorealistic images, and we now have the ability to generate a version of all the ones that we've created before. It creates one image every time until you tell it with this button here to generate multiple versions. And there you are. We're getting some pretty nice outcomes. I think the fact that we can do different aspect ratios, it's actually fairly photorealistic in how it produces images. This is something you can't do with, you just can't do it with DALL-E 3. It just doesn't produce photorealistic. And yeah, I really like the outcome. We can then say use the same image structure, and it will produce versions of all these images with the same image structure. Now, with a lot of online services, you will get 4 images or 2 images by default. With this one, it is just the one image, but once you've got that one image that you like, or a couple of images that you like, you can then begin to work with them using the same structure or whatever other constraint you want to put in. And you can see here, oh my God. Yeah, I mean, the user interface can be a bit confusing. I think this one here is supposed to match this one. This one here obviously matches this, but it can be a little bit confusing in terms of how you manage things. There's no way of actually renaming things or organizing them once they're created. But otherwise, I think it's a really good platform to be creative. And I think it's also probably the one that produces the most realistic images. And there are a lot of good models now, but I don't know if there's any that can produce images as photorealistic as this one here. So that's one of its key strengths, I think.